The morning sun cuts through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sterling Technologies' corporate headquarters, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors of the executive level. Catherine Sterling adjusts her Hermes blazer as she strides through the corridors with the confident click of Christian Louboutin heels, each step echoing her ascent to the corner office that bears her name in gold lettering. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. At 38, Catherine has built her reputation on being ruthless, decisive, and unapologetically demanding. Sterling Technologies, the software development company she inherited from her father and transformed into a billion-dollar enterprise, operates under her iron-fisted leadership style that tolerates no weakness, no excuses, and certainly no challenges to her authority. The company's Chicago headquarters buzzes with the controlled chaos of a tech giant in full operation. Developers huddle around monitors displaying lines of code that will power the next generation of financial software. Marketing executives fine-tune campaigns for clients whose names read like a Fortune 500 directory. Sales teams work phones with the intensity of commodities traders, each call potentially worth millions in revenue. But this morning carries an unusual tension. Word has spread through the cubicles and conference rooms that Catherine is conducting what she calls performance optimization meetings, a euphemism that every employee understands means someone's career is about to end. These sessions have become legendary within the company, not just for their brutality, but for Catherine's insistence on conducting them in the most public way possible. Marcus Thompson arrives at his desk on the 15th floor at exactly 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes earlier than his required start time. At 29, he spent the last 3 years working his way up from junior developer to senior software engineer, earning recognition for his innovative approaches to user interface design and his ability to solve complex coding problems that stump more senior colleagues. Marcus takes pride in his work, often staying late to perfect projects and volunteering for the challenging assignments that others avoid. His colleagues respect him not just for his technical skills, but for his willingness to mentor newer employees and his calm demeanor during high-pressure deadlines. He's the kind of employee who makes teams stronger, who builds bridges between departments, and who consistently delivers quality work ahead of schedule. This morning, Marcus settles into his workspace with the same methodical routine he's maintained for 3 years. Coffee first, black, no sugar, followed by a review of overnight system alerts and a quick scan of project timelines. His desk is organized with military precision, dual monitors perfectly aligned, keyboard and mouse positioned for optimal ergonomics, and a small collection of programming reference books arranged by frequency of use. The project he's currently leading involves developing a new client portal for Midwest Financial, one of Sterling Technologies' most lucrative accounts. The software will revolutionize how the bank's customers interact with their financial data, incorporating artificial intelligence algorithms that Marcus personally designed to predict spending patterns and suggest budget optimizations. For weeks, Marcus has been working closely with the client, attending video conferences at all hours to accommodate different time zones, and making modifications based on user feedback from focus groups. The project is not only on schedule, but ahead of projections, with the client expressing enthusiasm about features that exceed their original specifications. Catherine Sterling's morning begins in her corner office with its panoramic view of Lake Michigan. The space reflects her personality with stark efficiency: a glass desk that holds only essential items, black leather furniture arranged with geometric precision, and walls decorated with awards and photographs from various business publications that have featured her on their covers. Conference Room A sits on the 20th floor, adjacent to the executive offices, with glass walls that provide transparency into the proceedings, while allowing sound to carry throughout the surrounding workspace. The room is designed for presentations, with a large screen for displaying data and seating for up to 30 people, arranged in theater-style rows that focus attention on the presenter's position at the front. By 2:55 p.m., the conference room begins filling with people who weren't invited to the meeting but have learned to recognize the signs of Catherine's public performance reviews. Word spreads quickly through the office that something significant is about to happen, and employees find reasons to work late or take breaks that position them within sight of the glass-walled conference room. Marcus arrives at exactly 3 p.m., carrying a folder containing project documentation and status reports for the Midwest Financial account. He assumes the meeting will be a routine project review, possibly with client representatives joining via video conference to discuss the next phase of development. Catherine enters the conference room at 3:03 p.m., flanked by Jennifer Walsh and Linda Martinez from Human Resources. Her expression reveals nothing, maintaining the professional mask she wears during business meetings, but employees who have worked under her leadership for years recognize the subtle signs of controlled anger in the set of her shoulders and the deliberate pace of her movements. The meeting begins without preamble or explanation. Catherine positions herself at the front of the room while Marcus remains standing near the door, still unclear about the purpose of the gathering or why so many colleagues have found reasons to linger in the hallway outside. "Marcus Thompson," Catherine begins, her voice carrying the crisp authority that has commanded boardrooms and intimidated competitors. "I've been reviewing your recent work performance, and we need to discuss some serious concerns about your conduct and professionalism." The words land like a physical blow. Marcus feels his stomach drop as he realizes this isn't a project review or a collaborative discussion about client needs. This is something else entirely, something that threatens not just his current assignment but his entire career at Sterling Technologies. Around the conference room, colleagues who had been expecting a routine meeting suddenly understand they're witnessing something far more significant. Phones appear discreetly as employees begin documenting what they sense will be a moment that defines not just Marcus's future, but the culture of their workplace. Catherine continues speaking, but her words seem to come from a great distance as Marcus struggles to process the sudden shift from routine workday to career-threatening confrontation. He thinks about the Midwest financial project, about the client's positive feedback, about the colleagues who praised his work just hours earlier at lunch. Nothing in his recent performance reviews or project evaluations has suggested any problems with his work. His last formal evaluation, conducted just 2 months ago, rated him as exceeds expectations in every category and included written comments praising his technical innovation and professional demeanor. The folder in his hands contains documentation of every project milestone, every client communication, every piece of code he's written for the Midwest financial account. 3 years of excellent performance reviews, peer recommendations, and successful project completions create a professional record that contradicts whatever Victoria is about to accuse him of. But as Catherine's voice fills the conference room and the crowd outside grows larger, Marcus begins to understand that facts and documentation may not matter in whatever is about to unfold. This isn't about job performance or professional standards. This is about power, control, and a public demonstration of authority that will have consequences far beyond this single meeting. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The glass walls of Conference Room A have become a fishbowl, with Marcus Thompson standing at the center of a drama that will reshape lives, careers, and the entire trajectory of Sterling Technologies. Catherine Sterling believes she's about to demonstrate her absolute authority over her company and her employees. She has no idea that she's about to trigger a sequence of events that will cost her everything she spent her career building. Catherine's words slice through the conference room with surgical precision, each accusation delivered with the calculated timing of someone who has perfected the art of professional destruction. The glass walls that normally provide transparency and openness now feel like the barriers of an arena, with Marcus trapped at the center while colleagues press closer to witness the spectacle. "Your recent communications with our Midwest financial client have been completely inappropriate," Catherine continues, pulling out a printed email from her leather portfolio. This message, sent yesterday at 4:47 p.m., demonstrates a concerning lack of professional boundaries and an attempt to bypass proper company protocols. Marcus feels his heart racing as she reads from what he recognizes as his routine project update to the client. The email contained technical specifications for the user interface redesign, a timeline for the next development phase, and responses to questions the client had raised during their weekly video conference. Nothing in the communication deviated from standard procedures or crossed any professional lines. Furthermore, Catherine adds, her voice rising slightly to ensure everyone in the growing crowd can hear, "You've been conducting unauthorized meetings with client representatives without proper supervision or documentation. This kind of rogue behavior undermines our entire corporate structure and creates liability issues that could cost this company millions." The accusations are so fundamentally disconnected from reality that Marcus struggles to formulate a response. Every client interaction he's had has been scheduled through official channels, documented in the company's project management system and copied to relevant supervisors. His direct manager, Paul Rodriguez, has praised him repeatedly for his thorough communication practices and professional handling of client relationships. Linda Martinez from Human Resources shifts uncomfortably in her chair, consulting the file she's brought to the meeting. Her expression suggests confusion rather than agreement with Catherine's characterizations. As the head of HR, Linda has access to all employee communications and client interaction logs. She knows that Marcus's record shows exemplary adherence to company policies and protocols. Jennifer Walsh, Catherine's executive assistant, remains standing near the door with her tablet ready to document whatever decisions emerge from this confrontation. Her position provides her with a clear view of both Catherine's performance and the growing crowd of employees who have found reasons to work late or take extended breaks in the vicinity of Conference Room A. The client has specifically requested that you be removed from their account, Catherine announces, a statement that sends murmurs through the watching employees. They've expressed concerns about your unprofessional conduct and your failure to follow their explicit instructions regarding project deliverables. This accusation hits Marcus like a physical blow because he knows it's demonstrably false. Just this morning, he received an email from Janet Morrison, Midwest Financial's project director, expressing satisfaction with the latest software build and requesting that Marcus personally handle the training sessions for their staff when the system goes live next month. The email is still on his phone, time-stamped at 9:23 a.m., containing language that directly contradicts everything Catherine is claiming. Janet Morrison specifically wrote, "Marcus has been exceptional to work with. His technical expertise and communication skills have made this entire project smoother than we anticipated. We're hoping Sterling Technologies can assign him to our future development projects as well." Marcus reaches for his phone to access the email, but Catherine's sharp voice cuts through his movement. "Put that device away immediately. Your attempt to access outside communications during a disciplinary meeting demonstrates exactly the kind of disrespectful behavior we're addressing here." The watching employees exchange glances that reveal their growing discomfort with what they're witnessing. Many of them have worked directly with Marcus on various projects and know his reputation for professionalism and technical excellence. Sarah Chen from Quality Assurance whispers something to Robert Wilson from Sales, both of them looking increasingly troubled by the disconnect between Catherine's accusations and their personal experience with Marcus's work. "Let's discuss your actual performance metrics," Catherine continues, consulting another document from her portfolio. "Your code efficiency ratings have fallen below company standards for 3 consecutive months. Your project delivery times consistently exceed estimated timelines. And your collaboration scores from peer evaluations indicate significant interpersonal issues that are affecting team productivity." Each statement builds on the previous lie, creating a narrative of failure that bears no resemblance to Marcus's actual performance record. His code efficiency ratings have consistently ranked in the top 10% of all developers in the company. His project delivery times are among the fastest in his department, often coming in days or weeks ahead of schedule. His peer evaluations consistently praise his willingness to help colleagues and his positive impact on team dynamics. Linda Martinez finally speaks up, her voice carrying the authority of someone who has access to the actual performance data. "I'm sorry, but I think there may be some confusion about these metrics. The records I have show—" "The records you have are outdated," Catherine interrupts sharply, her eyes flashing with anger at the challenge to her narrative. "I'm working from the most current data, compiled specifically for this review. If your department isn't maintaining accurate performance tracking, that's another issue we'll need to address separately." The threat implicit in Catherine's response silences Linda immediately. Everyone in the room understands that challenging the CEO during one of her public disciplinary sessions is career suicide. Linda sinks back into her chair, her expression troubled but her voice stilled by the reality of corporate hierarchy and the need to protect her own position. Marcus finally finds his voice, though it comes out less steady than he would prefer. "Catherine, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. The client email I received this morning specifically praised the project progress and requested my continued involvement. I can show you." "What you can show me," Catherine interrupts, her voice rising to ensure maximum audibility throughout the floor, "is respect for the chain of command and acceptance of responsibility for your failures. Your attempt to deflect blame and make excuses only confirms the concerns that have been raised about your attitude and professionalism." The crowd outside the conference room has grown substantially, with employees from multiple departments finding reasons to work in the area. Phones appear discreetly as people begin documenting what they recognize as an extraordinary moment in the company's history. The situation has moved beyond a routine disciplinary meeting into something that feels like a public execution. Your inability to accept feedback demonstrates exactly why this company needs to maintain higher standards, Catherine continues, her voice carrying the rhythm of someone who has delivered similar speeches before. We cannot allow individual ego and defensiveness to compromise our client relationships and our corporate reputation. Marcus feels the familiar weight of systemic bias settling around him like a suffocating blanket. He's experienced this before in other contexts. The sudden reframing of competence as arrogance, of thoroughness as insubordination, of professional confidence as threatening behavior. The accusations feel like a script written in advance, with his responses predetermined to fit a narrative that has nothing to do with his actual performance. The pattern of behavior we're addressing here extends beyond this single client relationship, Catherine announces, pulling out yet another document. I have reports of your failure to follow direct instructions from supervisors, your tendency to challenge established procedures, and your apparent belief that you know better than the leadership team that built this company. Each accusation layers onto the previous ones, building a case that seems designed to justify a predetermined conclusion. Marcus realizes that this isn't really about his performance or his client relationships. This is about something else entirely. Something that has more to do with Catherine's need to demonstrate power than with any genuine concern about his work quality. Jennifer Walsh continues taking notes on her tablet, documenting what will become the official record of this meeting. Her expression remains professionally neutral, but employees who know her well notice the slight tension around her eyes that suggests discomfort with what she's witnessing and recording. The most concerning aspect of your recent behavior, Catherine continues, her voice dropping to a more intimate register that somehow makes her words more threatening, is your apparent attempt to build personal relationships with clients that bypass your supervisors and create conflicts of interest. This accusation cuts deeper because it attacks not just his professional competence but his personal integrity. Marcus has always maintained scrupulous boundaries with clients, ensuring that all communications go through proper channels and that personal interactions remain strictly professional. The suggestion that he's somehow violated these boundaries feels like a deliberate attempt to damage his reputation beyond repair. I want to be absolutely clear about something, Catherine says, stepping closer to Marcus in a move that feels calculated to emphasize the power dynamic. This company was built on principles of excellence, integrity, and respect for authority. When individual employees decide they can operate outside these principles, they threaten everything we've worked to achieve. The watching employees can feel the tension escalating beyond the bounds of normal workplace discipline. This has become something personal, something that transcends typical performance management and enters territory that feels punitive and vindictive. Several long-term employees exchange concerned glances, recognizing that they're witnessing something that could have implications for everyone's job security. Your repeated attempts to justify and excuse your behavior, rather than acknowledge your mistakes, shows exactly why this situation has reached this point, Catherine continues. Professional growth requires humility and the willingness to accept feedback. Your defensive attitude makes it clear that you're not prepared to meet the standards this company requires. Marcus stands in the center of this verbal assault, feeling isolated and exposed while his colleagues watch from beyond the glass walls. The fluorescent lights overhead seem harsh and unforgiving, casting sharp shadows that emphasize the theatrical nature of what's unfolding. He understands now that this isn't really a meeting. It's a performance designed to send a message to every employee about what happens when you somehow displease Catherine Sterling. The accusations continue to pile up, each one more disconnected from reality than the last, creating a distorted narrative that bears no resemblance to Marcus's actual work history or professional conduct. Catherine's voice fills the conference room with the confidence of someone who believes her authority makes her words unquestionable, while the crowd outside grows larger and more troubled by what they're witnessing. But what Catherine doesn't know, what she couldn't possibly anticipate, is that among the employees documenting this moment are people with connections that extend far beyond Sterling Technologies. The phones recording her words and capturing Marcus's dignified responses to her baseless accusations are about to broadcast this moment to audiences with the power to rewrite the ending of this story. In her confidence and her need to demonstrate absolute control, Catherine Sterling is creating evidence of her own downfall, one carefully documented accusation at a time. The atmosphere in Conference Room A shifts as Catherine transitions from general accusations to specific policy violations, each one designed to build an ironclad case for immediate termination. She opens a thick manila folder filled with what appears to be official documentation, though Marcus notices the papers look freshly printed rather than pulled from his actual personnel file. Company Policy 4.7 clearly states that all client communications must be approved by department supervisors before transmission, Catherine announces, holding up a document that Marcus has never seen before. Your violation of this protocol on March 15th, March 22nd, and April 3rd represents a pattern of insubordination that cannot be overlooked. Marcus feels a chill of recognition as he realizes Catherine is referencing routine project updates that were sent through the company's standard client portal system. These communications are automatically logged and copied to supervisors as part of the platform's built-in compliance features. The suggestion that he somehow bypassed approval processes is not just false. It's technically impossible given the company's own software infrastructure. Additionally, Catherine continues, your unauthorized access to sensitive client financial data violates both company confidentiality agreements and federal privacy regulations. The legal department has identified at least 6 instances where you exceeded your security clearance to access information outside your project scope. This accusation strikes at the foundation of Marcus's professional integrity. As a senior software engineer working on financial applications, he has the highest level of security clearance available to technical staff. His access permissions were personally approved by Catherine herself during his promotion review 6 months ago. The financial data he's accessed is not only within his authorization level, it's essential for developing the user interface features that the client specifically requested. Linda Martinez shifts uncomfortably in her seat, clearly aware that the security access logs she maintains would contradict Catherine's claims. The IT security department reports directly to her office, and she knows that Marcus's access patterns have been reviewed monthly as part of routine compliance audits. No irregularities have ever been flagged, and his security clearance was renewed just last quarter without any concerns raised. But Linda also recognizes the dangerous territory she's entering by challenging Catherine's narrative. The last HR director who questioned Catherine's decisions during a disciplinary meeting found herself reassigned to a subsidiary office in Nebraska within 2 weeks, effectively ending her career advancement at Sterling Technologies. The most egregious violation, Catherine continues, her voice carrying the practiced cadence of courtroom prosecution, involves your deliberate circumvention of our vendor approval process. You personally contracted with outside consulting services without proper authorization, creating potential conflicts of interest and exposing the company to significant legal liability. Marcus's mind races as he tries to understand what Catherine could possibly be referencing. He's never hired outside consultants or vendors. The only external relationship he's maintained is with Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, a cybersecurity researcher at Northwestern University who occasionally reviews his code architecture for academic research purposes. This relationship was not only approved by his supervisor, but was highlighted in the company newsletter as an example of beneficial academic partnerships. The watching employees sense the increasingly surreal nature of Catherine's accusations. Tom Bradley from the IT security team knows Marcus's access logs better than anyone, having worked with him on multiple security protocols. His expression shows growing confusion and concern as Catherine describes violations that simply don't exist in any system he monitors. Sarah Chen from Quality Assurance whispers to her colleague about the impossibility of the timeline Catherine is describing. The March dates she's citing coincide with a period when Sarah was working directly with Marcus on code reviews, and she remembers praising his meticulous attention to compliance protocols during that exact timeframe. Your pattern of unauthorized decision-making extends to project management as well, Catherine announces, producing another document. You've consistently modified project specifications without client approval, implemented features that weren't requested, and made technical decisions that exceed your authority level. This accusation would be laughable if the consequences weren't so serious. Every modification Marcus has made to the Midwest Financial Project has been documented in change requests that require both client approval and supervisor sign-off. The project management system maintains a complete audit trail of every decision, including the email threads where clients specifically requested additional features and praised Marcus for his proactive suggestions. Jennifer Walsh continues documenting the meeting on her tablet, but her typing has become more hesitant. As Catherine's executive assistant, She has access to the actual project files and communication logs. She knows the documentation exists to contradict many of Catherine's claims, but she also understands that her job depends on maintaining absolute loyalty to her boss regardless of factual accuracy. The technical quality of your work has also declined significantly, Catherine states, consulting what appears to be a performance evaluation report. Code review feedback indicates multiple instances of substandard programming practices, failure to follow established architecture guidelines, and the introduction of security vulnerabilities that required extensive remediation. Marcus knows this accusation is particularly devastating because technical competence is the foundation of his professional reputation. His code consistently passes all automated testing protocols and peer reviews. The security scan reports on his recent work show 0 vulnerabilities, and his programming practices have been used as training examples for newer developers. But he also recognizes that challenging these claims would require access to technical documentation that Catherine could easily restrict or modify. The power dynamic in the room makes it clear that evidence and facts are secondary to Catherine's predetermined narrative. Your failure to accept constructive criticism from supervisors demonstrates an attitude problem that makes you unsuitable for collaborative development work, Catherine continues. Multiple managers have reported difficulty working with you due to your defensive responses to feedback and your apparent belief that your methods are superior to established company standards. The accusation about attitude and collaboration particularly stings because Marcus has always prided himself on being a team player. His 360-degree review scores consistently rank him among the most collaborative employees in the technology division. Colleagues regularly seek his input on challenging projects, and he's mentored dozens of junior developers throughout his tenure at Sterling Technologies. Robert Wilson from the sales team recognizes the absurdity of the collaboration accusation. He's worked with Marcus on multiple client presentations and has always found him to be professional, responsive, and exceptionally good at explaining technical concepts to non-technical audiences. The suggestion that Marcus is difficult to work with contradicts Robert's direct experience and the feedback he's received from clients who specifically request Marcus's involvement in their projects. The cumulative effect of these violations creates a situation where your continued employment represents an unacceptable risk to this company, Catherine announces, her voice rising to ensure everyone on the floor can hear her conclusion. We cannot allow individual employees to operate outside our established systems and protocols, regardless of their perceived technical abilities. The phrase perceived technical abilities lands like a deliberate insult, designed to minimize and diminish Marcus's demonstrated expertise. It suggests that his technical competence is somehow questionable or overstated, despite years of successful project deliveries and client satisfaction scores that rank among the highest in the company. Marcus feels the systematic nature of the attack becoming clear. This isn't about any specific policy violation or performance issue. This is about creating a narrative that justifies a predetermined outcome while discrediting him so thoroughly that any future defense becomes impossible. Catherine is constructing a professional execution, complete with documentation that will prevent him from challenging the decision through internal appeals or external legal action. Your attempts to build personal relationships with clients outside proper business channels represents another serious breach of professional boundaries, Catherine states, introducing a new category of accusations. We have evidence of inappropriate communications that blur the line between business and personal interaction. This accusation feels particularly calculated because it attacks Marcus's character in ways that are difficult to defend against. The suggestion of, quote, inappropriate communications carries implications that could damage his reputation across the entire industry. Catherine is weaponizing innuendo and suggestion to create doubts about his professional conduct that could follow him to future employment opportunities. The watching crowd has grown to include employees from departments that rarely interact with the technology division. Word has spread throughout the building that something unprecedented is happening in Conference Room A, and people are finding excuses to witness what appears to be the most public and brutal termination in company history. Dr. Jennifer Foster, the company's chief technology officer, arrives at the edge of the crowd and immediately recognizes the severity of what she's witnessing. As Marcus's ultimate supervisor in the technical hierarchy, she knows his work better than anyone else in the building. The accusations Catherine is making contradict every performance review, every project evaluation, and every client feedback report that has crossed her desk. But Dr. Foster also understands the political realities of challenging Catherine Sterling in such a public forum. The CEO has made it clear that she doesn't appreciate being contradicted, especially by employees who might be seen as undermining her authority. The delicate balance between protecting a valuable employee and preserving her own position creates an impossible dilemma. The financial implications of your various policy violations could potentially expose this company to millions of dollars in liability, Catherine continues, her accusations now extending beyond performance issues into legal territory. The legal department has advised that your continued employment represents an unacceptable risk to our corporate interests. Marcus realizes that Catherine has now moved beyond simple termination into character assassination. By invoking legal liability and suggesting that his employment threatens the company's financial stability, she's creating a narrative that could prevent him from finding comparable employment elsewhere in the industry. The accusations are becoming increasingly extreme and disconnected from reality, but they're being delivered with the authority and documentation that could make them difficult to disprove. The conference room has become a fishbowl where Marcus stands isolated while Catherine systematically destroys his professional reputation in front of colleagues who know better but feel powerless to intervene. The glass walls that normally promote transparency and collaboration now feel like the barriers of a gladiatorial arena, with Catherine as the emperor delivering a thumbs-down verdict to an increasingly uncomfortable audience. What Catherine doesn't realize is that among the employees documenting this systematic destruction are people with connections that extend far beyond Sterling Technologies. The phones capturing her words and Marcus's dignified responses are connected to networks that reach into boardrooms, investment firms, and media outlets with the power to transform this moment of apparent triumph into her complete professional downfall. The tension in Conference Room A reaches a critical threshold as Catherine prepares to deliver what everyone recognizes will be the final blow. She closes the manila folder of fabricated documentation and fixes Marcus with a stare that conveys absolute finality. The crowd outside has swelled to include nearly 40 employees, their phones discreetly positioned to capture what they sense will be a pivotal moment in company history. Given the severity and pattern of violations we've documented today, Catherine announces, her voice carrying the cold precision of someone delivering a predetermined verdict. Sterling Technologies has no choice but to terminate your employment immediately and without severance compensation. The words hang in the air like a death sentence. Marcus feels the blood drain from his face as the full reality of his situation crystallizes. This isn't just about losing his job. Catherine has systematically destroyed his professional reputation in the most public way possible, creating a narrative that could follow him throughout his career. Furthermore, Catherine continues, clearly savoring the moment of ultimate power, your violations of company policy and potential legal infractions require us to report this matter to relevant regulatory authorities. The Financial Services Compliance Board will be notified of your unauthorized access to sensitive client data, and the State Labor Department will receive our full documentation of your policy violations. The threat of regulatory involvement sends a chill through the watching employees. Catherine isn't just firing Marcus, she's attempting to destroy his ability to work anywhere in the financial technology sector. The accusations she's making could result in industry-wide blacklisting and professional sanctions that would effectively end his career. Linda Martinez finally reaches her breaking point. As head of human resources, she has a legal obligation to ensure that termination procedures follow established protocols and are based on documented performance issues. What she's witnessing violates every principle of fair employment practices and creates massive liability for the company. "Catherine, I need to speak with you privately," Linda interjects, her voice carrying the authority of someone who understands the legal implications of what's happening. "There are procedural requirements we need to address before any final decisions are made." The interruption clearly infuriates Catherine, who views any challenge to her authority as insubordination. Her eyes flash with anger as she turns toward Linda with the expression of someone whose perfect performance has been disrupted by an unwelcome reality check. "The procedures have been followed," Catherine snaps, her professional mask slipping to reveal the raw anger beneath. "I am the CEO of this company, and I make the final decisions about employee performance and termination. Your role is to document my decisions, not to question them." The rebuke is delivered loud enough for everyone to hear, effectively putting Linda in her place while reinforcing Catherine's absolute authority. But Linda recognizes that her professional license and legal liability are at stake if she allows this termination to proceed without proper documentation and due process. "I understand your authority," Linda responds carefully, "but employment law requires specific documentation that I don't see in these files." We need to review his actual performance evaluations, conduct interviews with his direct supervisors, and provide him with the opportunity to respond to these allegations through proper channels. The suggestion that proper procedures haven't been followed sends visible shockwaves through Catherine's composure. Her carefully orchestrated performance is being challenged by someone with the professional credentials to understand employment law and the courage to speak up, despite the obvious career risks. "Are you questioning my judgment?" Catherine asks, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow carries more threat than her previous shouting. "Are you suggesting that I don't understand the policies of my own company or the legal requirements for employment decisions?" The question is clearly designed to force Linda into submission, but the HR director recognizes that her professional obligations extend beyond company politics. If this termination proceeds without proper documentation, Sterling Technologies could face wrongful termination lawsuits, discrimination claims, and regulatory sanctions that could cost millions of dollars. "I'm suggesting we follow established procedures to protect both the company and the employee," Linda responds, her voice steady despite the obvious pressure. "The documentation requirements exist to ensure that our decisions can withstand legal scrutiny and regulatory review." Marcus watches this exchange with growing amazement. For the first time since this nightmare began, someone with authority is challenging Catherine's narrative and demanding adherence to actual policies rather than manufactured accusations. The sight of Linda Martinez risking her own career to ensure fair treatment gives him the first glimmer of hope he's felt since entering this conference room. Dr. Jennifer Foster pushes through the crowd gathered outside the conference room, her urgency overriding her previous hesitation about challenging Catherine publicly. As Chief Technology Officer, she has direct responsibility for all technical personnel and cannot allow a valued employee to be terminated based on demonstrably false technical accusations. "Adja, I need to be included in this discussion," Dr. Foster announces as she enters the conference room, her voice carrying the authority of someone who reports directly to the board of directors. "As CTO, I have oversight responsibility for all technical personnel decisions, and I haven't been consulted about any performance issues with Marcus Thompson." The arrival of another senior executive creates a new dynamic in the room. Catherine's carefully controlled narrative is now being challenged by two department heads with the professional credentials and legal authority to question her decisions. The absolute power she's been wielding suddenly faces institutional checks and balances that she can't simply override through intimidation. "This matter doesn't require technical input," Catherine responds, but her voice lacks the confident authority she's maintained throughout the confrontation. "The issues we're addressing involve policy violations and professional conduct, not technical competence." Dr. Foster opens her tablet and begins scrolling through performance data that directly contradicts Catherine's claims. "I have Marcus's actual performance metrics here," she announces, her voice loud enough for the crowd outside to hear. "His code quality scores rank in the top 5% company-wide. His project delivery times consistently exceed expectations. His security compliance record is flawless." The introduction of actual performance data creates a stark contrast to Catherine's fabricated accusations. Employees in the crowd begin whispering among themselves as they recognize the disconnect between documented reality and Catherine's narrative. Phones continue recording as witnesses realize they're documenting something far more significant than a routine termination. "Those metrics are outdated," Catherine insists, but her response sounds desperate rather than authoritative. "I'm working from the most current performance evaluation data, compiled specifically for this review." Dr. Foster looks directly at Catherine with the expression of someone who recognizes deliberate deception. "These metrics are automatically updated in real time through our project management system. There's no way for performance data to be outdated. It's generated continuously from actual work output and client feedback." The technical explanation exposes the impossibility of Catherine's claims about having access to different or more current data. The automated systems that track employee performance are designed specifically to prevent manipulation and ensure objective evaluation criteria. Catherine's insistence on having superior information reveals the fictional nature of her entire case. Marcus feels a surge of vindication as Dr. Foster systematically dismantles the technical aspects of Catherine's accusations. But he also recognizes that facts and evidence may not matter if Catherine decides to exercise her ultimate authority as CEO, regardless of input from other executives. "I want to see the specific policy violations you've documented," Dr. Foster continues, her tone shifting from diplomatic to demanding. As CTO, I need to understand how these alleged security breaches occurred so I can implement additional safeguards to prevent future incidents. The request for specific documentation puts Catherine in an impossible position. The policy violations she's described don't exist in any actual system, and the security breaches she's alleged would have triggered automatic alerts that Dr. Foster would have received immediately. Her fabricated narrative cannot withstand technical scrutiny from someone with access to the actual systems and data. The technical details are confidential pending the completion of our investigation, Catherine responds, but the evasion is transparent to everyone in the room. Legal counsel has advised against sharing specific information that could compromise ongoing regulatory reviews. Jennifer Walsh, Catherine's executive assistant, stops typing on her tablet as she recognizes the impossibility of documenting claims that contradict verifiable system data. Her position requires her to maintain accurate records, but she's being asked to document accusations that she knows are false based on her access to the actual project files and communication logs. The conference room has become a pressure cooker where Catherine's absolute authority is being challenged by institutional processes and professional obligations that she cannot simply override through intimidation. The crowd outside recognizes that they're witnessing something unprecedented. A public confrontation between the CEO and department heads over fundamental questions of fairness and due process. I'm requesting an immediate suspension of these proceedings pending a full review of the documentation and compliance with proper termination procedures, Linda Martinez announces, her voice carrying the authority of someone invoking legal protections. Employment law requires specific steps that haven't been followed, and proceeding without proper documentation exposes the company to significant legal liability. The formal request for suspension creates a direct challenge to Catherine's authority that she cannot ignore or deflect. Linda is invoking legal requirements that supersede corporate hierarchy, effectively putting the termination on hold until proper procedures are followed. Catherine's face flushes red with anger as she realizes her carefully orchestrated performance is being derailed by employees who are placing legal obligations above personal loyalty. The absolute control she's maintained throughout her career at Sterling Technologies is suddenly constrained by institutional processes designed to prevent exactly the kind of arbitrary decision-making she's attempting to execute. This meeting is concluded, Catherine announces abruptly, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. I'll be consulting with legal counsel about proper procedures, and we'll reconvene when all compliance requirements have been addressed. The sudden end to the confrontation leaves everyone in the room stunned. Marcus stands in the center of the conference room, still unsure of his employment status but no longer facing immediate termination. The intervention by Linda Martinez and Dr. Foster has created a reprieve that gives him time to prepare a defense against Catherine's accusations. But as the crowd begins to disperse and employees return to their workstations, phones continue buzzing with messages and notifications. The documentation of Catherine's systematic attack on Marcus Thompson is spreading beyond Sterling Technologies, reaching networks and connections that will transform this moment of apparent corporate power into something far more dangerous for Catherine's future. The breaking point has been reached, but not in the way Catherine intended. Instead of demonstrating her absolute authority, she's revealed the arbitrary and potentially illegal nature of her decision-making process. The institutional challenges she's faced in Conference Room A are about to expand into external pressures that will threaten everything she's built. The emergency suspension of the termination meeting sends shockwaves through Sterling Technologies as employees return to their workstations carrying phones filled with recordings that will reshape the company's future. Within minutes of the conference room confrontation ending, the videos begin circulating through social media platforms, tagged with hashtags that will trend nationally within hours. Marcus Thompson sits at his desk, still processing the surreal experience of having his career systematically attacked and then temporarily saved by colleagues willing to risk their own positions. His computer screen displays dozens of supportive messages from coworkers, but he knows the reprieve may only be temporary if Catherine Sterling decides to pursue her vendetta through other channels. What Marcus doesn't know is that among the employees who witnessed his public humiliation is Rebecca Martinez, a junior developer whose uncle happens to be Thomas Rodriguez, chairman of the board of directors at Sterling Technologies. Rebecca has already sent the complete video footage to her uncle, along with a detailed explanation of Catherine's pattern of targeting high-performing minority employees. Thomas Rodriguez receives his niece's message while attending a board meeting for another company in downtown Chicago. The 68-year-old venture capitalist and technology industry veteran has served as Sterling Technologies board chairman for 8 years, during which time he's grown increasingly concerned about Catherine Sterling's leadership style and its impact on employee retention and company culture. The video footage Rebecca sends shows Catherine's systematic destruction of Marcus Thompson's reputation, her dismissal of factual evidence, and her angry reaction to being challenged by other executives. For Thomas Rodriguez, who has spent decades building inclusive corporate cultures, the display represents everything he's worked to eliminate from modern business practices. Within 30 minutes of receiving the footage, Thomas Rodriguez has forwarded it to the other 6 members of Sterling Technologies' board of directors, along with a message calling for an emergency board meeting to address what he describes as a crisis of leadership that threatens the company's legal standing and corporate reputation. Dr. Amanda Foster, Sterling Technologies' lead investor and board member, receives the video while reviewing quarterly reports in her Manhattan office. As a managing partner at Pinnacle Investment Group, which holds a 23% stake in Sterling Technologies, she immediately recognizes the catastrophic implications of Catherine's behavior for the company's valuation and future investment prospects. The footage shows clear evidence of discriminatory practices, potential wrongful termination, and a CEO who disregards legal advice from her own human resources department. For Dr. Foster, whose investment firm specializes in technology companies with strong governance practices, Catherine's behavior represents an existential threat to their portfolio company. Meanwhile, the story is spreading far beyond corporate boardrooms through social media networks that transform local workplace incidents into national conversations. The video of Catherine's accusations against Marcus, combined with the dramatic intervention by other executives, creates a compelling narrative that resonates with millions of people who have experienced workplace discrimination. Technology journalist Maria Santos picks up the story through her Twitter feed, where the hashtag Sterling Technologies is beginning to trend. As a reporter who specializes in corporate governance and workplace discrimination, she recognizes the significance of having such clear documentation of discriminatory practices by a high-profile CEO. Within 2 hours of the conference room confrontation, Maria Santos contacted Marcus Thompson directly, offering to investigate the broader patterns of discrimination at Sterling Technologies. Her preliminary research reveals a troubling history of complaints filed with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, along with exit interviews that document similar experiences by other minority employees. The legal implications of Catherine's behavior become clear when employment attorney David Chen reviews the video footage at the request of several Sterling Technologies employees. Chen, who specializes in wrongful termination and discrimination cases, immediately identifies multiple violations of federal employment law, including potential charges of racial discrimination, retaliation, and creating a hostile work environment. This video provides textbook evidence of discriminatory practices, Chen explains to the group of employees who have contacted him. The CEO's systematic attack on this employee's character, her dismissal of documented evidence, and her angry reaction to being challenged by other executives creates a clear pattern of bias that would be virtually impossible to defend in court. But the most devastating revelation comes from an unexpected source. Janet Morrison, the project director at Midwest Financial, who Catherine claimed had requested Marcus's removal from their account, learns about the incident through LinkedIn posts shared by Sterling Technologies employees. Shocked by the false claims made in her name, she immediately contacts Sterling Technologies' corporate offices. "I need to speak with someone in senior management immediately," Janet Morrison tells the receptionist when she calls Sterling Technologies. "I've just learned that my name was used in connection with false statements about one of your employees, and I need to set the record straight." Janet Morrison's call is transferred to Linda Martinez in Human Resources, who recognizes the call as potentially explosive evidence that could completely vindicate Marcus Thompson, while proving that Catherine Sterling fabricated crucial aspects of her case against him. "Ms. Morrison," Linda says carefully, "I want to make sure I understand your concerns correctly. Are you saying that the statements made about your feedback regarding Marcus Thompson's performance were inaccurate?" "They weren't just inaccurate," Janet Morrison responds firmly. "They were completely false. Marcus Thompson has been exceptional to work with. We specifically requested that he continue on our account for future projects. The idea that we wanted him removed is not only wrong, it's the opposite of everything we've communicated to your company. The phone call is automatically recorded as part of Sterling Technologies' standard customer service protocols, creating documented evidence that Catherine's central justification for attacking Marcus was completely fabricated. Linda Martinez recognizes that this recording, combined with the video footage from the conference room, creates legal exposure that could destroy the company if not handled properly. Emergency board meetings are typically scheduled weeks in advance, but the Sterling Technologies Board of Directors convenes an emergency video conference within 4 hours of Thomas Rodriguez's initial message. The 7 board members join the call from locations across the country, unified by their shared concern about the company's immediate future. "We're facing a crisis that threatens the fundamental viability of this company," Thomas Rodriguez begins, his voice carrying the gravity of someone who has managed corporate disasters for decades. "The video footage you've all reviewed shows clear evidence of discriminatory practices that could result in federal investigations, massive legal settlements, and permanent damage to our corporate reputation." Board member Patricia Williams, former CEO of a Fortune 500 technology company, responds with the blunt assessment that comes from years of crisis management experience. "This isn't just about one employee or one incident. Catherine's behavior creates liability for every decision she's made as CEO. We're looking at potential class action lawsuits, regulatory investigations, and investor withdrawals that could bankrupt the company." The board's discussion reveals the broader context that makes Catherine's behavior particularly catastrophic. Sterling Technologies is currently negotiating a potential merger with Global Systems International, a deal worth $2.3 billion that would transform both companies. The video footage of Catherine's discriminatory practices has already been shared with Global Systems executives, who are expressing serious concerns about proceeding with the merger. Global Systems is threatening to withdraw from merger negotiations, announces board member Robert Kim, who serves as the primary liaison with potential acquisition partners. Their legal team has identified the video footage as creating unacceptable liability exposure that could affect the combined company's market valuation and regulatory standing. Dr. Amanda Foster provides the investment perspective that puts Catherine's behavior into stark financial terms. "Pinnacle Investment Group cannot maintain our position in a company with this level of legal and reputational risk. If Catherine Sterling remains as CEO, we'll be forced to divest our entire stake, which will trigger similar responses from other institutional investors." The board's emergency session reveals that Catherine's moment of absolute power in Conference Room A has triggered a cascade of consequences that threaten to destroy everything she's built. The merger deal that would have represented the crown achievement of her career is now in jeopardy. The investment partners who provided the capital for Sterling Technologies' growth are preparing to withdraw their support. The legal exposure she's created could result in personal liability that extends beyond her corporate position. But the most immediate threat comes from an unexpected source. Michael Thompson, Marcus's younger brother and an investigative reporter for the Chicago Tribune, receives the video footage through his social media networks. Michael has spent 5 years building a reputation for exposing corporate misconduct and workplace discrimination, and he immediately recognizes his brother's situation as a story that could have national implications. Michael Thompson's initial research reveals that Catherine Sterling's discriminatory behavior follows a documented pattern spanning her entire tenure as CEO. He identifies 12 former employees who left Sterling Technologies after experiencing similar treatment, along with discrimination complaints filed with various regulatory agencies that were quietly settled through non-disclosure agreements. "This isn't an isolated incident," Michael explains to his editor as he outlines the investigation he wants to pursue. "This is systematic discrimination that's been covered up through legal settlements and non-disclosure agreements. The video footage my brother experienced gives us the documentation we need to expose a pattern that's been hidden for years." The Chicago Tribune's legal team reviews Michael's preliminary research and authorizes a full investigation into Sterling Technologies' employment practices. The newspaper's resources include access to court records, regulatory filings, and former employees, who may be willing to speak on the record about their experiences with Catherine Sterling's leadership. As the afternoon progresses, Catherine Sterling remains in her corner office, unaware that her moment of absolute power has triggered a coalition of forces that will reshape her future. The board of directors is preparing emergency action to protect the company from her leadership. Investors are calculating the financial impact of her behavior. Legal experts are building cases that could result in both civil and criminal charges. The videos recorded by Sterling Technologies employees continue spreading through social media platforms, generating millions of views and thousands of comments from people sharing their own experiences with workplace discrimination. The hashtag Justice for Marcus begins trending nationally, while hashtag Catherine Esterling becomes associated with corporate abuse and discriminatory practices. Marcus Thompson sits at his desk, still employed but uncertain about his future, unaware that his public humiliation has triggered a response that will not only vindicate him, but transform the entire landscape of Sterling Technologies. The breaking point reached in Conference Room A was not his career's end. It was Catherine Sterling's beginning of the end. The reveal of Catherine's true character, captured in high-definition video and witnessed by dozens of employees, has set in motion forces that will strip away her power, destroy her reputation, and hold her accountable for years of discriminatory practices. The absolute authority she wielded so confidently is about to become the instrument of her own downfall. The emergency board meeting reaches its inevitable conclusion at 6:47 p.m., exactly 12 hours after Catherine Sterling began her systematic attack on Marcus Thompson. Thomas Rodriguez, speaking with the authority of unanimous board consensus, delivers the decision that will reshape Sterling Technologies' future and end Catherine's career in corporate leadership. The board of directors has voted to immediately suspend Catherine Sterling from all executive duties pending a full investigation into discriminatory practices and potential violations of federal employment law, Rodriguez announces to the other board members via secure video conference. Dr. Jennifer Foster will serve as interim CEO effective immediately, with full authority to implement corrective measures and restore institutional integrity. The decision represents a complete reversal of corporate power dynamics within a single business day. Catherine Sterling, who began the morning believing she could destroy an employee's career with impunity, now finds herself stripped of the authority she's wielded for 8 years. The absolute power she exercised so confidently in Conference Room A has evaporated in the face of documented evidence and unanimous board action. Dr. Jennifer Foster receives the call from Thomas Rodriguez while reviewing technical documentation that will be crucial for defending Marcus Thompson against Catherine's fabricated accusations. As the newly appointed interim CEO, her first priority is implementing immediate changes that will prevent similar incidents and begin repairing the company's damaged reputation. Jennifer, you have complete authority to take whatever actions are necessary to address this crisis, Rodriguez explains during their private conversation. The board recognizes that Catherine's behavior has created legal exposure that threatens the company's survival. We're depending on your leadership to implement systemic changes that will restore investor confidence and protect our employees. The appointment of Dr. Foster as interim CEO sends immediate signals throughout Sterling Technologies that fundamental changes are underway. Unlike Catherine's authoritarian approach, Dr. Foster has built her career on collaborative leadership and evidence-based decision-making. Her technical background and reputation for fairness make her the ideal candidate to restore institutional credibility. Meanwhile, Marcus Thompson remains at his desk, unaware that the corporate hierarchy above him has been completely restructured. His colleagues continue offering support and sharing their own experiences with Catherine's discriminatory behavior, but he has no idea that the woman who attempted to destroy his career is no longer in a position to threaten anyone's employment. The legal department at Sterling Technologies works frantically to assess the company's liability exposure from Catherine's documented behavior. Senior counsel Rachel Adams reviews the video footage with the growing recognition that the company faces potential federal investigations, class action lawsuits, and regulatory sanctions that could cost hundreds of millions of dollars. We need to implement immediate damage control measures, Adams explains to the emergency legal team that's been assembled to address the crisis. The video evidence shows clear violations of federal employment law, and we have documented proof that the CEO fabricated evidence to justify discriminatory actions. This creates liability that extends far beyond wrongful termination. The legal team's analysis reveals that Catherine's behavior violates multiple federal statutes, including the Civil Rights Act, the Equal Employment Opportunity Act, and potentially the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, if her actions affected the company's financial reporting. The comprehensive nature of her violations creates exposure that could result in both civil penalties and criminal charges. Dr. Foster's first action as interim CEO is to personally contact Marcus Thompson and request an immediate meeting to address the injustices he's experienced. At 7:15 p.m., she calls Marcus's direct line with an apology that begins to restore his faith in institutional fairness. "Marcus, this is Jennifer Foster. I've just been appointed interim CEO, and I want to personally apologize for the completely inappropriate treatment you received today. I'm calling to inform you that Catherine Sterling has been suspended from all executive duties, and we're implementing immediate measures to address the discrimination you experienced." The phone call represents Marcus's first indication that his professional nightmare may be ending rather than beginning. Dr. Foster's calm, respectful tone provides a stark contrast to Catherine's aggressive accusations and suggests that evidence and fairness will now guide the company's decision-making process. "I want you to know that we've reviewed your actual performance records, and they completely contradict every accusation that was made against you today," Dr. Foster continues. "Your work on the Midwest Financial Project has been exemplary, and we've received direct confirmation from the client that they're extremely satisfied with your performance and want you to continue on their account." The validation of his professional competence provides immediate relief from the character assassination he endured in Conference Room A. But Marcus also recognizes that systemic changes will be necessary to prevent other employees from experiencing similar treatment in the future. The investigative team at the Chicago Tribune, led by Michael Thompson, accelerates their research as they recognize the national significance of the story developing at Sterling Technologies. Michael's personal connection to the victim provides him with inside access to documentation and witness testimony that will support a comprehensive exposé of discriminatory practices in corporate America. "This story represents something bigger than one company or one CEO," Michael explains to his editor as they plan the Tribune's coverage strategy. "We have documented evidence of systematic discrimination, along with video footage that shows how corporate power can be weaponized against employees who don't fit certain profiles. This is exactly the kind of accountability journalism that can drive systemic change." The Tribune's investigation reveals that Catherine Sterling's discriminatory behavior extends far beyond Marcus Thompson's experience. Employment records show a pattern of targeting high-performing minority employees through fabricated performance issues, policy violations, and public humiliation designed to force resignations without triggering wrongful termination lawsuits. Global Systems International, Sterling Technologies' potential merger partner, convenes their own emergency board meeting to assess whether they can proceed with the $2.3 billion acquisition given the legal and reputational risks created by Catherine's documented behavior. The video footage has been reviewed by Global Systems' legal team, who identify multiple violations that could affect the merged company's regulatory standing. The liability exposure from Sterling Technologies' discriminatory practices could affect our ability to maintain government contracts and could trigger federal investigations that would disrupt our operations, explains Global Systems CEO Patricia Morgan during the emergency board session. "We need to seriously consider whether this merger can proceed under these circumstances." The potential collapse of the merger deal represents the most immediate financial consequence of Catherine's behavior. The $2.3 billion transaction would have represented the crown achievement of her career, but her moment of absolute power in Conference Room A has now jeopardized the deal that was supposed to secure her legacy as a transformational business leader. Pinnacle Investment Group, Sterling Technologies' largest investor, begins implementing its withdrawal strategy as Dr. Amanda Foster recognizes that the company's governance failures require immediate divestment. The investment firm's position includes 23% of Sterling Technologies' outstanding shares, and their withdrawal will trigger automatic selling by other institutional investors. "We cannot maintain our fiduciary responsibility to our investors while remaining involved with a company that has demonstrated such fundamental governance failures," Dr. Foster explains to her investment team. "Catherine Sterling's documented discrimination creates liability exposure that's incompatible with our investment criteria." The investment withdrawal process begins immediately, with Pinnacle Investment Group's legal team preparing the documentation necessary to divest their entire position in Sterling Technologies. The forced sale will depress the company's stock price and could trigger additional investor withdrawals that would threaten the company's financial stability. At 8:30 p.m., Dr. Jennifer Foster calls an all-hands meeting for Sterling Technologies employees, using the company's video conferencing system to address every employee simultaneously. The unprecedented company-wide meeting signals that fundamental changes are being implemented to address the crisis created by Catherine's behavior. "I want to address the events that occurred in our offices today and outline the immediate actions we're taking to ensure that all employees are treated with dignity and respect," Dr. Foster begins, her calm professionalism providing a stark contrast to Catherine's aggressive leadership style. The company-wide meeting provides employees with official confirmation that Catherine Sterling has been suspended and that systematic changes are being implemented to prevent discriminatory practices. Dr. Foster's transparent communication approach represents a complete departure from Catherine's secretive, authoritarian management style. Effective immediately, we're implementing mandatory bias training for all supervisory personnel, establishing an anonymous reporting system for discrimination complaints, and conducting a comprehensive review of all employment decisions made over the past 2 years, Dr. Foster announces. We're also retaining external legal counsel to ensure that our employment practices comply with federal law and industry best practices. The comprehensive reform package demonstrates Sterling Technologies' commitment to addressing the systemic issues that enabled Catherine's discriminatory behavior. The company's willingness to conduct a 2-year review of employment decisions signals that other victims of discrimination may receive justice and compensation for their experiences. Marcus Thompson watches the company-wide meeting from his desk, surrounded by colleagues who recognize that they're witnessing a historic transformation in their workplace culture. The systematic changes being implemented will protect future employees from experiencing the character assassination he endured in Conference Room A. But the most significant announcement comes at the end of Dr. Foster's presentation. I want to personally acknowledge Marcus Thompson, whose professionalism and dignity in the face of completely inappropriate treatment has helped expose systemic problems that we're now committed to addressing. Marcus will be receiving a formal apology from the company, along with compensation for the damages he's suffered as a result of today's events. The public acknowledgement of Marcus's professionalism provides vindication that restores his reputation and establishes him as a catalyst for positive change rather than a victim of corporate abuse. His colleagues respond with applause that echoes through the building, recognizing that his courageous response to discrimination has improved conditions for everyone. As the company-wide meeting concludes, Catherine Sterling sits in her corner office, officially suspended from all duties but not yet informed of the full scope of consequences she's facing. The absolute power she wielded 12 hours earlier has been stripped away by the same institutional processes she ignored when attacking Marcus Thompson. The phones recording her systematic destruction of Marcus Thompson's reputation have transformed her moment of apparent triumph into comprehensive evidence of her unfitness for corporate leadership. The justice being implemented throughout Sterling Technologies represents not just accountability for her actions, but a systemic transformation that will prevent future discrimination and protect all employees, regardless of their background or appearance. The immediate justice phase demonstrates how quickly corporate power dynamics can shift when discriminatory behavior is documented and challenged through proper institutional channels. Catherine Sterling's downfall serves as a powerful reminder that absolute power without accountability inevitably leads to consequences that can destroy everything a leader has worked to build. The morning after Catherine Sterling's suspension brings a transformed atmosphere to Sterling Technologies, as employees arrive to find a company fundamentally changed by the events of a single day. Dr. Jennifer Foster's interim leadership has already begun implementing reforms that extend far beyond Marcus Thompson's individual case, creating systemic changes that will protect future generations of employees from discriminatory practices. The security badges that once granted Catherine access to every corner of the building have been deactivated, her corporate accounts frozen, and her corner office sealed pending the completion of legal proceedings. The physical symbols of her absolute authority have been stripped away as quickly as her institutional power, leaving behind only the consequences of her documented behavior. Mays. Marcus Thompson arrives at work to find his desk decorated with supportive messages from colleagues across multiple departments, each note representing not just personal encouragement, but recognition that his dignified response to systematic discrimination has catalyzed changes that will benefit everyone. The isolation he felt in Conference Room A has been replaced by company-wide solidarity that validates his professional integrity. The first major external consequence arrives at 9:15 a.m. when FBI agents from the Civil Rights Division appear at Sterling Technologies' corporate headquarters with a warrant to investigate potential violations of federal employment law. The video footage of Catherine's discriminatory behavior has triggered a federal investigation that could result in criminal charges and massive civil penalties. Special Agent Sandra Williams leads the federal investigation team that will spend the next several weeks examining Sterling Technologies' employment records, interviewing current and former employees, and building a comprehensive case that could reshape how corporate discrimination is prosecuted under federal law. We're investigating potential violations of the Civil Rights Act, conspiracy to deny equal employment opportunities, and possible obstruction of justice related to the systematic suppression of discrimination complaints, Agent Williams explains to Dr. Foster during their initial meeting. The video evidence provides clear documentation of discriminatory intent, but we need to determine the full scope of illegal practices that may have occurred under Ms. Sterling's leadership. The federal investigation represents the most serious consequence Catherine will face, extending far beyond employment termination into potential criminal liability that could result in federal prison time. The documentation of her systematic attack on Marcus Thompson provides prosecutors with the evidence they need to pursue charges that have historically been difficult to prove in corporate settings. Dr. Foster cooperates fully with the federal investigation, providing access to employment records, email communications, and internal documents that reveal the broader pattern of discriminatory practices that enabled Catherine's behavior. The company's willingness to assist federal prosecutors demonstrates their commitment to accountability and systemic reform. The Chicago Tribune publishes Michael Thompson's comprehensive investigation on the front page of their Sunday edition, with the headline "Systematic Discrimination at Tech Giant Exposed by Viral Video." The article combines the dramatic footage from Conference Room A with extensive research into Sterling Technologies' employment practices over the past 5 years. Michael's investigation reveals that Catherine Sterling's discriminatory behavior affected at least 37 employees during her tenure as CEO, with minority workers facing significantly higher termination rates, lower promotion opportunities, and systematic exclusion from high-visibility projects. The pattern of discrimination was carefully concealed through non-disclosure agreements and legal settlements that prevented victims from speaking publicly about their experiences. The video of my brother's experience represents just one documented instance of systematic discrimination that has affected dozens of employees over multiple years, Michael Thompson writes in his investigative piece. Court records and employment data reveal a pattern of targeting high-performing minority employees through fabricated performance issues and public humiliation, designed to force resignations without triggering wrongful termination lawsuits. The Tribune's investigation includes interviews with 12 former Sterling Technologies employees who describe experiences remarkably similar to Marcus's public humiliation. Each story follows the same pattern: exemplary performance reviews followed by sudden accusations of policy violations, fabricated client complaints, and public confrontations designed to destroy professional reputations. Dr. Maria Santos, the technology journalist who first identified the national significance of the story, publishes a comprehensive analysis of corporate governance failures that enabled Catherine's discriminatory behavior. Her article in Tech Industry Weekly becomes required reading for business school students and corporate board members seeking to understand how institutional safeguards can fail. The Sterling Technologies case demonstrates how individual prejudice can metastasize into systematic discrimination when corporate governance structures fail to provide adequate oversight and accountability, Dr. Santos writes. The video documentation of Catherine Sterling's behavior provides a textbook example of how authority without accountability inevitably leads to abuse of power. The academic attention generated by the Sterling Technologies case leads to the development of new corporate governance protocols specifically designed to prevent discriminatory practices. Business schools across the country begin incorporating the case study into their curricula, using the dramatic footage to illustrate the importance of institutional checks and balances. Global Systems International officially withdraws from merger negotiations with Sterling Technologies, citing the legal and reputational risks created by Catherine's documented discriminatory behavior. The collapse of the $2.3 billion deal represents one of the largest merger failures in technology industry history and serves as a powerful reminder that corporate misconduct has immediate financial consequences. We cannot proceed with an acquisition that would expose our shareholders to the legal liability and reputational damage associated with systematic discriminatory practices, announces Global Systems CEO Patricia Morgan during a press conference that receives national media coverage. The video evidence from Sterling Technologies demonstrates institutional failures that are incompatible with our corporate values and governance standards. The merger collapse sent Sterling Technologies' stock price into freefall, losing 34% of its value in the first week following Catherine's suspension. The financial market's swift punishment of discriminatory behavior demonstrates that corporate prejudice is not just morally wrong but economically destructive for shareholders and stakeholders. Pinnacle Investment Group completes its divestment from Sterling Technologies, selling their entire 23% stake at a significant loss that serves as a powerful signal to other institutional investors. The forced sale triggers additional selling pressure that threatens the company's financial stability and forces Dr. Foster to implement emergency cost-cutting measures. Our fiduciary duty to investors requires us to divest from companies that demonstrate fundamental governance failures, explains Dr. Amanda Foster during a conference call with financial analysts. The systematic discrimination documented at Sterling Technologies creates liability exposure that's incompatible with our investment criteria and risk management protocols. The investment community's response to Catherine's behavior establishes a new precedent for how discriminatory practices affect corporate valuations and investor confidence. The immediate financial consequences faced by Sterling Technologies serve as a warning to other companies that tolerance for discrimination carries measurable economic costs. Employment attorney David Chen files a comprehensive class action lawsuit on behalf of Marcus Thompson and 36 other current and former Sterling Technologies employees who experienced similar discriminatory treatment. The lawsuit seeks $47 million in damages and represents one of the largest employment discrimination cases in Illinois state history. The video evidence from Conference Room A provides unprecedented documentation of systematic discriminatory practices that affected dozens of employees over multiple years, Chen explains during a press conference announcing the lawsuit. Catherine Sterling's documented behavior represents the tip of the iceberg in terms of institutional discrimination that created a hostile work environment for minority employees. The class action lawsuit includes specific damages for lost wages, emotional distress, and career advancement opportunities that were denied due to discriminatory practices. The comprehensive nature of the legal action ensures that all victims of Catherine's behavior will receive compensation while establishing legal precedents that will protect future employees. Marcus Thompson testifies before a congressional subcommittee investigating employment discrimination in the technology industry, providing lawmakers with first-hand testimony about how systematic prejudice operates in corporate environments. His dignified presentation of the facts demonstrates the importance of individual courage in exposing institutional failures. The experience I documented at Sterling Technologies is not unique to one company or one industry, Marcus explains to the congressional panel. Systematic discrimination thrives in environments where individual authority is not constrained by institutional accountability. The reforms we've implemented at Sterling Technologies should serve as a model for preventing similar incidents throughout corporate America. Marcus's congressional testimony led to the introduction of the Corporate Accountability and Employment Act, federal legislation that would require companies to implement mandatory bias training, establish independent oversight mechanisms, and report discrimination complaints to federal authorities. The proposed law represents the most comprehensive employment discrimination reform in decades. The legislative response to Catherine's documented behavior demonstrates how individual incidents of workplace discrimination can drive systemic policy changes that protect millions of workers. Marcus's experience has evolved from personal victimization to catalyst for national reform that will benefit employees across all industries. Dr. Jennifer Foster's permanent appointment as CEO of Sterling Technologies represents a complete transformation in corporate leadership philosophy and practice. Her collaborative approach to decision-making, commitment to evidence-based policies, and emphasis on inclusive workplace culture provide a stark contrast to Catherine's authoritarian management style. Under Dr. Foster's leadership, Sterling Technologies implements the most comprehensive anti-discrimination program in the technology industry, including mandatory bias training for all employees, independent oversight of employment decisions, and regular audits of promotion and termination patterns. The company's transformation becomes a model for other corporations seeking to prevent discriminatory practices. Our experience with systematic discrimination has taught us that preventing prejudice requires constant vigilance and institutional commitment to fairness, Dr. Foster explains during her first annual shareholders meeting as permanent CEO. The reforms we've implemented ensure that every employee is judged based on their performance and potential rather than their appearance or background. The company's stock price gradually recovers as investors recognize that Dr. Foster's leadership has eliminated the legal risks and reputational damage associated with Catherine's discriminatory behavior. The financial markets reward Sterling Technologies' commitment to inclusive practices, demonstrating that diversity and inclusion are not just moral imperatives, but sound business strategies. The portfolio. Catherine Sterling faces criminal charges filed by federal prosecutors who have built a comprehensive case based on her documented discriminatory behavior. The charges include conspiracy to violate civil rights, obstruction of justice, and wire fraud related to her false statements about Marcus Thompson's performance and client relationships. The criminal trial receives national media attention as prosecutors use the video footage from Conference Room A to demonstrate how individual prejudice can escalate into systematic violations of federal law. Catherine's documented behavior provides clear evidence of discriminatory intent that has historically been difficult to prove in corporate settings. The jury deliberates for less than 4 hours before finding Catherine guilty on all charges, resulting in a 3-year federal prison sentence and $2.4 million in fines and restitution. The criminal conviction establishes important legal precedents for prosecuting corporate discrimination and sends a powerful message that workplace prejudice will face serious consequences. Catherine's conviction also triggers civil liability that forces her to forfeit her Sterling Technologies stock options, executive compensation packages, and personal assets to pay damages to discrimination victims. The comprehensive financial consequences ensure that her discriminatory behavior results in personal bankruptcy and permanent exclusion from corporate leadership roles. The Sterling Technologies case study is a required curriculum in business schools, law schools, and corporate training programs across the country. The dramatic video footage provides educators with powerful tools for illustrating the consequences of discriminatory behavior and the importance of institutional safeguards. Professor Janet Williams at Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management develops a comprehensive case study that examines how individual prejudice can escalate into systematic discrimination when corporate governance structures fail to provide adequate oversight. Her research becomes essential reading for current and future business leaders. The Sterling Technologies case demonstrates that discrimination is not just a human resources issue but a fundamental business risk that can destroy shareholder value and corporate reputations, Professor Williams explains to her MBA students. The video documentation of Catherine Sterling's behavior provides unprecedented insight into how authority without accountability inevitably leads to abuse of power. The academic attention generated by the case leads to the development of new corporate governance protocols, bias detection systems, and accountability mechanisms that are implemented by companies across multiple industries. The systematic reforms triggered by Marcus Thompson's experience help prevent similar incidents of workplace discrimination. 5 years after the Conference Room A confrontation, Marcus Thompson has been promoted to Director of Technology Innovation at Sterling Technologies, leading the development of artificial intelligence systems that help companies detect and prevent discriminatory practices in their employment decisions. His personal experience with systematic prejudice has evolved into professional expertise in creating inclusive workplace cultures. The AI bias detection system that Marcus develops is licensed to corporations across multiple industries, generating millions of dollars in revenue for Sterling Technologies while helping prevent discrimination incidents at hundreds of companies. His transformation from discrimination victim to technology innovator demonstrates the power of individual resilience and institutional support. My experience in Conference Room A taught me that discrimination thrives in environments where individual decisions are not subject to systematic review and accountability, Marcus explains during a keynote presentation at the National Diversity and Inclusion Conference. The technology we've developed helps companies identify patterns of bias before they escalate into systematic discrimination. Marcus's speaking engagements and technology innovations have made him a national leader in the fight against workplace discrimination. His dignified response to Catherine Sterling's attack has evolved into a career dedicated to preventing other employees from experiencing similar treatment. Dr. Jennifer Foster's leadership at Sterling Technologies has transformed the company into an industry leader in diversity and inclusion, with employee satisfaction scores that rank among the highest in the technology sector. The systematic reforms implemented after Catherine's suspension have created a workplace culture that attracts top talent from diverse backgrounds. Sterling Technologies' financial performance under Dr. Foster's leadership has exceeded all projections, with revenue growth that outpaces industry averages and profit margins that demonstrate the business value of inclusive practices. The company's success provides compelling evidence that diversity and inclusion are essential elements of competitive advantage. Our transformation from a culture of discrimination to a culture of inclusion has made us stronger, more innovative, and more profitable, Dr. Foster explains during her 5th annual shareholders meeting. The systematic changes we implemented after the Catherine Sterling incident have created sustainable competitive advantages that will benefit shareholders and employees for decades to come. The broader impact of the Sterling Technologies case extends far beyond one company or one industry, creating ripple effects that have transformed how corporate America approaches diversity, inclusion, and accountability. The video footage from Conference Room A continues to serve as a powerful reminder, that individual courage can catalyze systematic change when supported by institutional commitment to justice. The message that emerges from Marcus Thompson's experience is both simple and profound. Dignity is non-negotiable, documentation is powerful, and institutional accountability is essential for preventing discrimination. His transformation from victim to advocate demonstrates that individual experiences of injustice can become catalysts for systematic reform that protects millions of workers. Bene, the Sterling Technologies case reminds us that in our interconnected world, moments of injustice can be documented, shared, and transformed into movements for change. Catherine Sterling's moment of absolute power in conference room A lasted less than an hour, but the consequences of her documented behavior continue to protect employees and prevent discrimination years later. Every workplace confrontation has the potential to reveal character, test institutional integrity, and demonstrate whether companies truly live up to their stated values. The phones that documented Catherine's systematic attack on Marcus Thompson captured more than evidence of discrimination. They captured a transformation that continues to reshape corporate America and protect workers from the abuse of power. The ultimate message is clear. Treat every person with dignity and respect, not because you know who they are or who they might be connected to, but because it's the right thing to do. In our digital age, character is always being documented, integrity is always being tested, and justice may be just one viral video away. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.